kilogram, which is a very important factor as a Tour de France cyclist or any cyclist or any athlete that has to go up and down hills. Why? Because you've got to carry that weight. The limiting factor, anytime you start going uphill, whether you're a runner or a cyclist, is gravity. It's a huge factor. So he was at about 6.2 watts per kilogram. You can see relatively close, although, you know, as we got a little further down, it's never exact, but we were very close. And one of the overall markers we looked for was to always be within 10% of Tour de France condition, any time during the year. That's not a big drop, okay? Basically, in Tour de France condition, he'd be able to produce about 500 watts average. For 20 minutes, you know. 500 watts being, but throughout the course of the year, never dropping out of 10%. Now, why? That means you have to stay in a lot better condition year-round. But you can see every start of every Paris-Nice, he was very close to the same throughout all his Tour de France victories. You know, very, very close at the start of the year. He never dropped away. Why? What if there's an injury? What if he gets injured? He has a knee injury, or has a broken collarbone, or something like that. And that's time that he's not going to be able to train. It's going to reduce the amount of time he's going to be able to ready himself for the Tour de France or for his goal victory. It's basically 365 days out of the year you train. And if you looked at his chief competitor, Jan Ullrich, he would vary widely in conditioning. He'd be in great condition at the start of the Tour de France, but in Paris-Nice, he couldn't even finish. He'd be 30, 40% less than what he was at Tour de France. We would never let ourselves drop that far. Using these field test markers, we're always able to modify the training. And if we started the year like here in 2001, in very good condition, 480 watts for 20 minutes, very good condition, we could afford to take the next 3 or 4 weeks with very easy, moderate training. And it's very important to understand, anytime you put an athlete under a very severe training load, like you're training them hard, that's not how they get faster. They get faster when they rest. When they train hard, they allow themselves time to recover, and then they respond. Your body adapts to that. When you put yourself under very hard training, there's a lot of negative impacts that can happen too. So, philosophically, I would prefer to train Lance easier and take it easy as long as we were in good condition. I can afford to take 3 weeks and ride just long endurance miles at relatively moderate pace without the training stress of intervals, high intensity training, increasing that chance of injury, increasing the oxidative stress on the muscles, all these issues. So if you're a professional athlete, endurance athlete, always staying in shape year-round. And Lance we kind of pioneered this aspect, because before there'd be wild swings in conditioning. Athletes would be in great shape for the Tour de France or for Kona Ironman or things like that, but throughout the rest of the year, their condition would drop dramatically. That can't happen anymore. Aerodynamics, another important component of the model for success. This is in a wind tunnel, and where we looked at Lance in various positions under various types of training load. This actual wind tunnel, he's able to ride at basically Tour de France intensity, 400, 450 watts. So your position changes when you're on the bike. When you're static before and just sitting in a position, you can get in a very aerodynamic position, but you don't know if you can ride on that when you're out on the road, as you're actually under race type efforts. Now Lance had a big obstacle to overcome in his Tour de France preparation from aerodynamic standpoint, and that was right there. See that big hump? That's not very good. Big aerodynamic drag. So we did a lot to try to be able to flatten that out, and it actually gave birth to this helmet. See how this helmet creates an airflow that actually goes over the hump. And that took a while. Before, it used to actually come down right to it, and that would actually create more aerodynamic resistance. So we created this helmet that would actually push air over that hump, so we wouldn't get the resistance because of a hump in his back. The reason why he has this hump in his back, he had a childhood injury where he has a bone spur actually, and is created in his spine, in the belly of the muscle in his back, and it has created that hump. So we actually developed equipment that actually was starting to able to actually not only reduce the aerodynamic drag of this hump, it actually started improving his aerodynamic drag, because that actually started pushing airflow over that hump and extended further back. So we actually got a much better aerodynamic position. Next thing that we'd always do, we'd do the wind tunnel testing, and then we'd go to the velodrome. Why would we go to the velodrome? Well, a couple things we'd look at is when we get in the velodrome, we were able to, with a power meter, be able to run that athlete at certain power outputs from the position that we developed in the velodrome and get average power over 4 laps and see and increase the intensity of that time on the velodrome and see how that athlete changes in position. As I said, we were able to do it in the wind tunnel, but it even changes more when you're out on the road or when you're actually riding at a much higher intensity. So we were able to look at that, and what the protocol that we would use is they would come back in, and if we would modify the position on the velodrome from the wind tunnel and then run them back out, if we reduce the average power from after modifying their position, we not only improved aerodynamics, but we also improved biomechanics as well. So we got aerodynamics and biomechanics combined. A couple things on aerodynamics. 100 grams of drag equates to basically 15 watts at 30 miles an hour or 50 kilometers an hour. What does 100 grams of drag look like? What does 100 grams, just anybody have any idea what that would look like? 100 grams of drag, it's about that much. It's about the head of an eraser on a pencil. So if we could reduce 100 grams of aerodynamic drag, we would save basically 15 watts at 50 kilometers an hour, or over a 40 kilometer flat time trial, it'd basically give you about 20 seconds. So that's just 100 grams. You look at getting 1,000 grams, you're talking about a significant savings. And it's not only the savings that's happening in the time trial. Physiologically, think about the savings that you're affecting for the next day. Remember, the Tour de France is 23 days. If it's costing him less on any one day, you've got a little more the next day. Next aspect with this is when we go to the track. Here's an example. This is Paolo Salvadelli, who won the Giro 2 times and rode for Discovery for a couple years, Discovery team. Here we are on the velodrome. The things that we run them at basically 40 kilometers an hour. At 40 kilometers an hour, he was averaging 340 watts. All right? 314 watts average. What we did is we brought him down, this front part, we lowered him by 16 millimeters.